Don't the decorations look wonderful? I was slightly overwhelmed by the flowers, which made me sneeze just then, but it's wonderful just sitting here. Let's take a moment. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all our hearts be now and always acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Amen. He is risen.
He is risen indeed. Alleluia.
You can do better than that. He is risen.
He is risen indeed. Alleluia.
It's the Easter acclamation, and it always just makes me tingle somehow. See if you can do it even better. He is risen.
He is risen indeed. Alleluia.
Or is it, he is risen? He's risen. Or maybe, as Yoda would say, risen is he? Which is it? Which is it for you? Let's think about that a little bit. We've just heard the story of how a group of women went to the tomb expecting to do the necessary ministrations to Jesus' body, and instead of mourning, they were told he was gone, he was risen, and all of a sudden, all the words he'd said to them sort of made sense all of a sudden. And off they rushed to tell the 11. And what did they get from the 11? You what? He's risen? They got a sort of blankness mostly. They didn't get an immediate, he is risen. But Peter thought, hang on a minute, I think I'm going to check this out. And I think that's a reasonable thing to do. I'm a lawyer, many of you who are here already know, and evidence matters. When you're doing contracts, when you're doing court work, evidence matters. And so Peter thought, yeah, I'm going to go and check it out. He ran back to the tomb to check. Now, we often we can't help but think from a scientific mindset. That's the world we live in. We like proof and scientific proof of things. Not everything can be proved scientifically, because that particular method is only appropriate for certain natural things. There is a mystery, but there is also an awful lot of evidence. I mean, Herod and Pilate existed. We know that from separate documents in the Roman Empire. If Herod and Pilate existed, why on earth would it be the case that saying that he is risen is not true? It's just not logical to include the two together. And truth does matter. Truth does matter. And I looked at that quite carefully when I was in my sort of mid-late 20s, and that question really sort of bugged at me. And so I looked at it. And then people say the Gospels are sort of self-referential. Well, we've got 4 Gospels. We've got more documentary evidence for this than we have for many things that we know are true in history. Why can't the Gospel accounts of this extraordinary rising of Jesus be true? He is risen. Peter was convinced. In the weeks that followed, and we've heard from later in the period that followed in our reading just now, he took that message out and he affirmed that he and other disciples had seen it. Many people had seen it. We've heard the power of that word in Peter's word, and in Pentecost we will hear the power of Peter's sermon. Peter was so excited. He was so excited he couldn't keep it in. others and he were prepared to die for the truth of this. He is risen. And that was needed, because Jesus needed to die and needed to rise again, because we have become separated from God, and through Jesus, that connection with God is restored. And we can know Jesus and walk with Jesus in the same way. Peter's risen Jesus was one that made him defy convention. He believed women when they told him he is risen. And that was completely abnormal. Women were not actually considered reliable witnesses in a Roman court. Peter believed them, and he saw that Jesus was risen that day. And as you go through Acts, you see a church that just explodes across the Western Mediterranean, the Eastern Mediterranean, the world that we know. And what about your Jesus? Is he risen? Or is he risen? Just there that you forget on the day-to-day. Because the thing is, the risen Jesus can be with you in the disappointments of life, in the joys of life, and in the mundane as well. All of those are evidence in your heart of the risen Jesus. So, when we hear that he's risen, let's let our hallelujahs ring out like yours did just now. Let's not be afraid to tell others that he is risen. Let's have the confidence that Mary and those women at the tomb had, that Peter had as well, to say, yes, he's risen, and to live our lives in the reality of that risen Jesus. Doing the things that we heard Peter say he did. He healed, he walked with people, he helped people. Let's live as if he is risen. Is he risen? He is risen. Risen is he.